My name is Elena. I am 29 years old. I thought I understood what love meant. I thought my love was strong enough to carry us through any storm. I thought if I loved him with all I had, it would be enough. I met Lucas 3 years ago. It was one of those rainy afternoons when the sky looks heavy and the world feels smaller. I had just rushed into a small cafe trying to escape the sudden downpour. In my hurry, I slipped, and the coffee cup in my hand spilled across the floor. Lucas laughed, a soft, genuine laugh that didn't feel like mockery. He bent down, helping me gather the scattered napkins and papers from my bag. His hands were rough, calloused from work, but his smile was so warm that it made the whole rainy world seem a little brighter. From that day, our story began. At first, it was small little chats over coffee, sharing favorite songs, exchanging jokes. Lucas was a car mechanic. He spent his days fixing broken things, bringing life back into metal and engines. His hands always carried the smell of oil and iron, but his voice was gentle whenever he spoke to me. We started dating a few weeks later. Lucas often called me his angel. He said he had never believed in luck until he met me. And I, young and full of dreams, believed him with my whole heart. In the beginning, everything felt like magic. After 1 year, Lucas moved into my tiny apartment. We made a simple life together, cooking instant noodles on rainy nights, watching old movies on a worn-out sofa, laughing at nothing and everything. At night, he would hold my hand until we both drifted off to sleep. I worked at a small bookstore downtown. Life was quiet, sometimes even boring to others, but to me, it was enough. Every evening, Lucas waited for me outside, sometimes with a bar of my favorite chocolate, sometimes with a small bunch of flowers he picked himself. Small gestures, but they wrapped my heart in warm, invisible ribbons. Whenever he said, "I'm lucky to have you, Elena," I always smiled and whispered back, "I'm the lucky one." I truly believed that, or I wanted to. But slowly, like a cold breeze slipping through a cracked window, change crept in. Lucas started coming late to pick me up. At first, he had excuses: late repairs, helping a friend, unexpected work. I believed him because love in my mind meant trust. Some nights he stayed out so late that I fell asleep waiting, only to wake up cold and alone. I would find him tiptoeing in after midnight, smelling faintly of a sweet perfume that wasn't mine. "Where were you?" I asked one night, forcing my voice to sound light. "Just fixing a car," he said, avoiding my eyes. Long night. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Because if love wasn't real, then what had I been fighting for? But my heart, even while pretending to sleep beside him, whispered to me, "Something is wrong, Elena." Weeks melted into months. The warmth that once surrounded us began to fade, like morning mist swallowed by the rising sun. Lucas laughed less. He stopped bringing flowers. The little texts that used to make my heart skip, thinking of you, miss your smile, became rare, almost forgotten. One evening, as I waited by the bookstore door watching cars pass by, I realized something chilling. He had forgotten to pick me up. Again. No call. No message. The cold wind brushed against my cheeks as I waited under the flickering street lamp. Minutes dragged into an hour. When Lucas finally arrived, he barely apologized. "Busy at work, babe," he said, ruffling my hair like I was a little girl, not the woman who waited endlessly for him. I smiled weakly. Because love meant patience, right? But the whispers in my heart grew louder. One Sunday morning, while cleaning the kitchen, I saw Lucas's phone buzzing on the table. He was in the shower. Normally, I would have ignored it. Love is trust, I told myself 1,000 times. But today, my hand reached out, almost against my will. A single message flashed on the screen. "Can't wait to see you tonight." And the world tilted. The floor felt slippery under my bare feet. I didn't recognize the number. I didn't recognize the heart emoji. I placed the phone down as if it had burned me. My hands were trembling. My heart was pounding so loud that I could hear it in my ears. I stared out the window, trying to convince myself, maybe it's just a friend, maybe I'm overthinking. But deep down, a sad, tired part of me knew, love should never have to beg for answers. That night, Lucas came home late again. I watched him carefully, the way he avoided my eyes, the way he smelled faintly of a different perfume, sweeter, sharper. I asked, "Where were you?" He shrugged. "Helping a guy from work. Mike." "Mike," I repeated softly. "You don't know him," Lucas said quickly, too quickly. He laughed, but it sounded wrong, forced, thin. I smiled and nodded. I didn't argue, I didn't cry, I stayed loyal. But inside, something fragile started to break. Was I wrong to trust him, or was I just afraid of being alone? At the bookstore, my hands became clumsy. I dropped books. I forgot orders. I smiled at customers, but my mind floated far, far away, trapped somewhere between the woman I was and the woman I was losing. "Elena, are you all right?" my boss asked one afternoon, concern in her eyes. I lied. "I'm just a little tired." Tired, what a small word for such a heavy feeling. That night, I decided to surprise Lucas. Maybe he was just stressed. Maybe he needed to feel loved again. Maybe love could still save us. I packed a basket with his favorite dinner, roast chicken, fresh bread I baked that morning, and a bottle of sweet tea he loved. I even wore his favorite blue sweater, the one he said made my eyes look like the ocean. I wanted him to remember. I wanted us to feel real again. I drove to the garage where he worked. The street was quiet, too quiet, no lights, no sound of tools, just the echo of my own footsteps. I called him once, twice. No answer, my heart squeezed. Something was wrong. I drove aimlessly for a while, letting the soft night wrap around me like a question. And then, through the blurry windshield, I saw him. Lucas, sitting on a park bench under the golden glow of a street lamp. And he wasn't alone. A woman leaned into him, laughing at something he whispered. He touched her hair softly, the same way he used to touch mine. He kissed her cheek tenderly. They looked happy. They looked like everything I had once believed we were. I froze. The basket of food sat untouched beside me, still warm, still full of hope that was now breaking apart inside my chest. Tears blurred my vision. I wiped them away roughly. I clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. "Stay strong, Elena," I whispered, but even my own voice sounded hollow. When Lucas came home that night, he smiled at me, the same old smile, like nothing had changed. He kissed my forehead. "Long day at work, babe," he said. I stared at him, at his familiar face, at the man I had once thought would be my forever, and I realized something terrifying. I didn't recognize him anymore. I said nothing, just smiled, just stayed loyal. But loyalty without truth is not love, it is a cage. The days that followed were heavy, like walking through water that never let me breathe. I smiled when I had to. I nodded when people spoke to me. But inside I was crumbling. At work, the smallest things overwhelmed me. A customer asking for the wrong book, the ringing of the phone, the silence of lunch breaks where I sat staring at my sandwich, unable to eat. But the worst part, I still loved him, and I hated that. How do you stop loving someone who lives in your home, even when your heart is screaming that something is wrong? One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the rooftops, I decided I couldn't wait anymore. Lucas always said he was working late at the garage. So that night, I packed the same warm dinner again. Bread, chicken, tea, like a ritual I hoped could bring us back. I wore my blue sweater again. I wanted to believe maybe it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe I just needed to see him smile when I showed up with dinner. But when I reached the garage, it was empty, dark, quiet, closed. My hands started shaking. I called his phone, no answer. I waited 10 minutes, 15, still nothing. A voice inside me whispered, "You already know the truth." But my heart, broken as it was, needed proof. So I drove, I didn't know where, just anywhere. And then, like something out of a dream or a nightmare, I saw them again. A small public park, the same one as before, same bench. Lucas was there, the woman was there. But this time, there was a child, a little boy. He couldn't have been more than 3 years old. His tiny hands reached up to Lucas as he shouted, "Daddy." My breath caught. I gripped the steering wheel with both hands, trying to keep myself from collapsing. Lucas lifted the boy into his arms and kissed his forehead. The woman laughed, touching Lucas on the arm. They looked like a family, not a secret, not an affair. A family. Time stopped. I couldn't move. I couldn't blink. My body was still, but inside I was shattering piece by piece like glass dropped on tile. I had made him dinner. I had waited every night. I had believed every lie. I sat in my car long after they went inside. I watched the house glow with soft yellow light. And I realized that was his real life. I was the other one, the hidden one. When Lucas came home that night, his lies tasted sweeter than ever. He kissed my forehead again, told me some story about traffic, about engine trouble, about nothing. I smiled. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there at the kitchen table and listened to him lie word by word. But inside I was writing the final page. The next morning I couldn't go to work. I called in sick. I lay in bed for hours, my body numb, my heart heavy. That afternoon I drove back to the house. I needed to see it again, to be sure I hadn't imagined it. The woman was out front watering her flowers. The little boy played with a red toy car, and then Lucas arrived, casual, smiling, carrying a new bouquet of pink roses. He kissed the woman on the lips. He lifted the boy up high in the air, spinning him like joy itself. They all laughed together. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a second life. A whole life. One that I was never part of. I drove home in silence, the kind of silence that presses into your skin like ice. At home, the apartment felt smaller than ever. Every corner reminded me of a lie. Every picture frame became a betrayal. I sat at the table, staring at my shaking hands. And then I wrote a note, just one line. I saw the truth. Goodbye. That evening, when Lucas walked through the door, he looked tired. He didn't expect anything to be different. He didn't see the small suitcase by the door. He didn't see the fire in my eyes, quiet but burning steady. He smiled. "Hey, babe, what's for dinner?" I stood up slowly, handed him the note. He read it once, then again. His face shifted, confusion first, then fear, then guilt. "Elena, I can explain." I shook my head. "No, Lucas, you already explained everything." He stepped forward, reaching for me. But I stepped back. His touch no longer felt like love. It felt like poison. "I loved you," I said. My voice cracked, but I did not cry. "I stayed loyal to you. I trusted you. I built a life around you. I waited. Every night I believed in us." His mouth opened, but no words came. "Because what do you say when you've burned down someone's world?" "I am not your secret," I whispered. "I am not your spare life." I picked up my suitcase. Lucas called after me, "Please don't go, I love you." I turned to look at him one last time. You loved yourself, Lucas. It's not me. As I stepped out into the cold air, I didn't know where I was going. But I knew what I was leaving behind. The street was dark. The stars looked far away, but I kept walking. One step, then another. Each one taking me away from lies. And close that night I stayed at a small hotel at the edge of town. The room was plain. The bed was cold. The walls were too white, too quiet. I sat by the window, hugging my knees, watching the cars below. How many of them were going home? How many people inside those cars were being honest with the ones who waited for them? I didn't cry much, just a few tears, like gentle rain. The kind that comes when the storm is almost over. When morning came, I whispered to myself, I will not stay broken. I picked up my phone and called the one person who had always been there, even when I tried to act strong. My sister, Sophie. I hadn't told her about Lucas. I was too proud. I wanted to protect the illusion that I had a happy life, a real relationship. But now I needed her. When she picked up the phone, her voice was soft. Elena. And I said only 2 words. I need you. She didn't ask questions, she just said, come home, we'll figure it out together. Sophie lived 2 hours away in a small town by the lake. Quiet roads, old trees, houses with wide porches and flower pots. The moment I stepped into her home, I felt something loosen in my chest. She hugged me tightly, like she already knew how heavy I was inside. She made tea. She gave me a soft blanket. She didn't say, I told you so. She didn't ask for details. She just listened. When I finally told her everything through tears and long pauses, she held my hand and said, you loved him truly. That's never a mistake. The mistake was his. I stayed with Sophie for weeks. At first, I barely moved. The pain felt too large to name. I woke up heavy. I walked slowly. I cried quietly at night when the world outside slept. But slowly, something began to shift. Sophie had a garden. Every morning she tended to it, watering, trimming, humming softly. One morning I joined her, at first just to sit nearby. Then I helped pull weeds, then plant new flowers. My hands touched the soil, warm, real, alive. That evening I slept a little better. One afternoon she asked me gently, what do you want now, Elena? I looked up at the sky. I thought for a long time. I want to find her again. The woman I was. The woman who laughed without fear. The woman who dreamed before she fell in love. Sophie smiled. She's not gone. She's just waiting for you to come back to her. The next day, I went to the town library. I borrowed a book about painting. I bought cheap brushes and colors from a small shop. Then I sat by the lake and painted a tree. It wasn't good. The lines were messy. The colors were wrong, but I smiled. Because for the first time in a long time, I was doing something for me. I baked my first loaf of bread. It came out hard as a rock. Sophie laughed so hard, I couldn't help but laugh too. It was the first real laugh I had in weeks. I took long walks in the forest behind her house, listened to the birds, watched the wind move through the trees. I felt the world holding me, not rushing me, not judging me, just holding me. One evening, I sat outside watching the sunset. The colors were soft and kind, peach, gold, lavender. I whispered softly, "You are enough, Elena. You always were." That night, I made a promise to love myself the way I had once loved Lucas, completely, patiently, honestly. And this time without fear. Weeks turned into months. Lucas called once. I saw his name on my screen. My heart jumped, but my hand stayed still. I didn't answer, because healing meant not needing closure from someone who never offered truth. Because now I no longer waited for his love. I had found enough love inside myself. One sunny afternoon, I went to a small cafe in town. I brought my paint kit and a notebook. I sat near the window and painted another tree, this one taller, stronger, a symbol of myself. An old woman sat at the next table. She looked at me kindly and said, "You have a soft face, dear." I smiled, "Thank you." She looked at my painting. "You look like someone who's walked through fire, but still shines." Her words landed deep in my heart. And for the first time, my tears were not of sadness, but pride. Yes, I had walked through fire, and I was still here. That night I didn't cry. I read a book, lit a candle, and baked soft cookies. I stood at Sophie's kitchen door and watched the stars. I wasn't waiting for someone to love me anymore. I was simply living, breathing, healing, becoming. One day maybe I'll love again, but not like before. Next time it will be different. Next time I will choose someone who chooses me back, someone who will never make me feel like a secret, someone whose love is quiet, true, and proud, like mine. But until that day, I am enough, I am whole. I am not the woman who cried by the window. I am not the woman who waited for lies. I am Elena, strong, brave, free.